notice. We have quite a good turnout based on the short time that we had for publicizing the event. Thank you for joining. Today we have Dr. Shrikant Borkar speaking with us on demystifying Diwali. And Dr. Borkar, let me quickly introduce him. After introducing him, I will lay down the ground rules for our conversation today. Dr. Borkar did his DPhil from the University of Sussex, and his thesis was called In the Twilight Zone of Aid Bureaucracy, a study of social policy entrepreneurs. Significantly, today, Dr. Borkar will be talking about alternative histories when it comes to Diwali and the minority stories that we don't possibly hear when we look at the hegemonic narrative of how Diwali actually functions. The ground rules for the discussion today are so you can send the questions on the chat, and we will take the questions after Dr. Borkar has spoken for 20 minutes. The question and answer round will be moderated by me. And secondly, the event today will be recorded and it will be going up. So, and the chat is being monitored, and that's the reason you're all muted. And any disturbance will be taken care of by the person moderating, and the person will be removed from the conversation and the discussion in particular. I hope you're ready. Thank you, Dr. Borkar, again on behalf of St. Antony's GCR and everyone here. And if you could, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Devika, and all your colleagues and all organizers. Thank you very much for organizing this discussion on the eve of a third day of the Diwali. Um, as all of us, we know that Diwali is one of the greatest and iconic festival from India and of Hindus. But then, as we all know, that Diwali is a kind of a national festival, and then it has got such a magnitude and such a great kind of acceptance all over India and even beyond India, wherever the Indians are gone. And this third day, especially from the point of view of the Indian Hindu astrology, and there's this Hindu theology which terms this third day especially as a Bali Pratipada, Bhau as well. So the first day of the Diwali is like a Dhanteras wherein the goddess of the wealth, Lakshmi, is worshipped. Gai Goros, Dhanteras, these are the terms which are used. First day, holy cow is worshipped, and second day there is Dhanteras, that is the celebration of the goddess of the wealth, Lakshmi. And third day is the Bali Pratipada, which has got a legendary and it has got a historical connotation and this the historical dimension from the point of view of our discussion. And then I think is on the eve of the Bali Pratipada, and usually Bali Pratipada is the day which is not much celebrated among the Hindus, despite they do have these celebrations, festivities, and the eating and the firing of the fireworks, lighting up the fireworks, and all the festivities. But still, this particular day. So I think this is very important, and I could not thank more than this that you have organized this great discussion. All the students of Indology and the comparative histories of India, especially from their point of view, this Diwali, it is like a it is like a it is like a turning point in the history of ancient India. And before we start a proper talk on this most iconic festivals, one of the most iconic festivals of India, that symbolizes the victory of light over darkness and the victory of knowledge over ignorance and the good over evil. Onset, I'd like to offer some starters which would aptly summarize our entire discussion in one sentence or two, because that is the trajectory, that's going to be trajectory of this critical comparative analysis of this kind of sometimes contentious narratives, sometimes overlapping and conflicting narratives of a Diwali. and then why Diwali is, why Indians started celebrating Diwali, how Diwali has got this such a prominence, prominent place and significance, religious significance in the lives of the Indian. So from that point of view, I'd like to say that an eminent researcher, and one of the iconoclasts, who was also a founding father of modern India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was an anthropologist himself and also a very serious student of comparative histories of India and the world. So he used to say that Indian history is nothing but a mortal battle between Buddhism and Brahminism. And furthermore, he adds his a power-packed one-liner, and he summarizes that from the ideological point of view and historical point of view. And of course, his historiography was interdisciplinary. Historiography implies the methods of study of a past, whereas a history or study of a history, it implies the interdisciplinary study of archaeology and philology, etymology, and all the historical evidences which proves the qualitative analysis, of course, which anthropological aspect, but that is included while the study of history in general. So from the historical point of view, Baba Sahib was referring, Dr. Ambedkar was referring to Indology, etymology, at the same time, the comparative etymology and not only the Hindu scriptures, but also Jain scriptures, Greek evidences, travelogues, those who are written the travelogues, and all those existing evidences of the contemporary histories which are found from the different distinct resources. So this was his way of studying the history. So he says that in Indian context, history has become myth and myth has become history. However, in the light of current myth making and research done by archaeologists, historians, and Indologists like Francis Buchanan, Michael Witzel, Alexander Cunningham was a colonial amateur collector or an industry officer turned into archaeologist, and also K. Jamna Das, who is an eminent Indologist, and Indologist controversial from the point of view of the Hindu fundamentalist Wendy Doniger. So from the point of view of this eminent spokesperson on the history and Indology, experts on the Indology, I would say, I would like to refine what Dr. Ambedkar said in context of the Indian history, Indian culture, Indian past, that the history of India is nothing but a contentious saga of a cultural political crusade between the First Nations of India and Vedic migrants of antiquity. That particularly, which this aspect has not been discussed so far. There have been many write-ups and many researches, especially and Martha Nussbaum also talked about it from the sociological point of view. So I would like to say that these Vedic migrants initially came to India as asylum seeker, and they were the broken nations because of the contemporary wars and the political upheaval. So these Vedic migrants, they came to India, and they just, there was no like a obvious physical or like a real war, but then there was a cultural attention and there was a cultural usurpation and there was a cultural colonization. So as usually it happens, there has been a lot of studies in migration studies where like Stephen Wojtowicz, Robin Cohen, they have written about the cultural social reproduction of the migrants. And on the same vein, on the line, and the same lines, when these ancient migrants, they migrated to India and then they met the contemporary First Nations and the natives of India. They studied the culture. They tried to kind of get into that culture. But then as because of their peculiar political context, and then they have to kind of, it was their necessity by the virtue of their necessity to stay into the power position to create hegemony. They waged this cultural war, and then eventually after 21 like 2100 years, they initially they could not get into the helm, the upper helm of the power structures. They never were rulers. uh, uh, During the Shakas and Huns, Shaks and Huns, and later on during the Muslim invasion and the Muslim period, the Mughal period, and still the British colonial period, they were never on the upper helm of the political setup affairs, but they were were key and prominent positions so that they can wield their power and then structure their hegemony. Nicholas Dirk, in one way, is right when he says that it was a colonial period that helped the priest class and the so-called social groups, those who are on the hegemony in India at the moment, to consolidate their status quo. So in one way, he's not fully that means he makes. I'm not agreeing with his full. I'm not agreeing fully with his argument, but in some way or other, he's right. So whenever these foreign invasions took place, and then they came, and then they during the physical war and the direct war, they could take over India. This particular Vedic asylum seeker, especially those who and their present kind of successors, those who believe in the Vedic hegemony, Vedic superiority, or caste supremacy, they kind of survived. So I think our discussion on this contradicting, overlapping, and conflating narratives, traditional Brahminic Vedic narratives versus the native First Nation narratives of Diwali, this discussion should be looked after, understood from that point of view, because then and then it will make a sense that why there are many narratives and those who are not necessarily consistent and they're existing in Indian society. Um, Diwali as such has never been celebrated all over India, but there were the prototypes of Diwalis and there were the similar festivals of the same magnitude which were celebrated. Diwali is mostly, even today, Diwali is mostly northern Indian, like the area which is termed as Aryavart. It is a northern Indian phenomena. The similar phenomena seen in the southern India is called Onam. And this particular Onam, it celebrates, there is something common between this Onam, which is the grand celebration, like a Diwali-like celebration of the southern India, Kerala, and some part of the Tamil Nadu, and Diwali. And the link which links is a mythical ancient figure of the great emperor king, a benevolent king called Bali Raja. Um, so after this particular, from the point of view of this entry of these migrants, Vedic migrants, and their kind of cultural battle, or the battle of hegemony, battle of overpowering each other, establishing the supremacy. From that point of view, there were many books and scriptures were written, and epics were written. Before we discuss about that, I would like to go towards what are the contradicting narratives or traditional narratives of the Diwali in the mainstream cultural mainstream of India. So, and thereafter we will see most of the part I would like to cover during our question answer session. The traditional Vedic Brahminical narratives of Diwali, those who are very much popular and those who, everybody knows about them, they are Diwali is celebrated on the eve of the great legendary mythical king Rama's victory over demon king Ravana, from the epic of Ramayana. That Rama, after defeating Ravana, who was a demon king and who kidnapped his wife, So he killed him and then he came back to his capital, and there on that particular eve of arrival, that particular day of victory was celebrated as Diwali. This is one narrative. This is a traditional narrative. And the source of this narrative, it is generally understood Ramayana, but then for your information, and interestingly enough, nowhere in the Valmiki Ramayana, except celebration, the Deepavali celebration is mentioned. Deepavali is known for its lighting of the lamps, and then the lamps are kept overnight, and then the ensuing celebrities and festivities are there. Celebrations and festivities are there. But in this particular original Ramayana, there are 300 Ramayanas, and Valmiki Ramayana is one of the original considered as the original Ramayanas. In this Valmiki Ramayana, interestingly, there is no elaborated or clear picture of referring to that Diwali was celebrated on the eve of the arrival of the King Rama. Second kind of this narrative which is there in the mind of mainstream Indians, that is that according to the Padma Purana, Lakshmi goddess, the goddess of wealth, she married to the god of the god, Vishnu. And then on the eve of the Diwali, and because of that instance, according to Padma Purana, this is the start of the celebration of the Diwali in India, in Bharatvarsh. Now, third thing, which is not discussed, which is not a part of a mainstream discussion on Diwali, beside the festivities, is there's a two very important and very interesting celebrations along with Diwali. That is the third day of Diwali, that is the Bali Pratipada, and the fourth day, that is the celebration of this relationship between the familial filial relationship between the brother and sister, that is the Bhau Beach. So, about Bali Pratipada, it is said that according to the Vamana Purana, that the popular king Bali, he was the lord of the native India, and then the asylum seeker, like novice priest, that is called Batu Vamana, novice, a Hindu priest, a Brahmin priest, Batu Vamana. He approaches to the Bali, the great emperor of this land, native India, native emperor of this land, India, then contemporary, then called like a Jambudvip or Bharata. And he approaches to this king Bali, who is very popular, very benevolent, and he asks him for 3 steps of land, because he is kind of he is displaced, and then they have come from the famine-stricken or some far remote area from the antiquity. And he is an asylum seeker. He is a political asylum seeker. So he asked Bali, and then Bali offers him 3 steps of land, which is a very symbolic way of saying. And then this Batu Vamana, or the novice Brahmin monk, he enlarges in a demonic way, and then he becomes bigger in the dimension, and he becomes very like a colossal. He assumes the colossal shape, and then with 1 step, he occupies the earth. In the 2nd step, he occupies the Patala, or the Netherlands, and the 3rd step, he does not have a place to put his step on. So he has to step on, and Bali offers his head to him, and then this way, Batu Vamana, the novice Brahmin, kills the great benevolent king Bali. I was talking about this Deepavali, like a festival celebrated in the southern India, which is called Onam. Even this Onam has this kind of a nostalgic connection with with the myth of coming of the Bali and coming back of the Bali, who has been treacherously killed by Vedic Batu Vamana, according to the story, which symbolizes that how the native land of the First Nations was kind of decidefully taken and colonized by the Vedic asylum seeker. But then I think more than the demographical, political, geographical land mass. It is more the cultural kind of a cultural brainwashing or the cultural victory of the Brahminism, you can call it, or Vedicism. Now, compared to this particular story, which comes in the Vamana Purana, and Puranas are the only base for this story. On the other hand, there is this native narratives of Diwali. This native narratives, on the other hand, they are not based on they are not based on the medieval literature or the Puranic literature. They are based on the Jain literature. They are based on the literature written by the Protestant religion like Sikhism, and they are based on the Buddhist Buddhist literature. The first reference, the most oldest reference to the celebration of the Diwali is from Reifying's travelogue, which he wrote in the 400 AD. And along with, there is another contemporary reference to Diwali or the celebration of the Diwali like festival that is in Jain religious literature, holy scriptures. In the Jain scripture, this Diwali, it is said that the Deepavali or Diwali is celebrated on the eve of the final liberation of Jinendra, that is a Mahavira, the originator, the founder of Jainism, one of the genes of the Jainism. And during this, on the liberation of Mahavira, this Deepavali, they said that, okay, the greatest light of our life and our this religion, he has gone forever, but then let us not be kind of defeated by this, and let us lit the lamps all over night, all throughout the night, to celebrate the light of what Mahavira has taught to us. Fayan, at least 6 times in his travels to Buddhist kingdoms in 400 AD, he at least six times refers to the Deepavali-like celebration, wherein these lamps are lit and they are kept one night or more than one night. And interestingly, other than Fayan, if you go through the Buddhist literature of Sipitaka, except the prayer to the previous Buddhas and the historical Buddha, the Gautama the Buddha, in the prayer, in one particular prayer, there is a reference to lighting a lamp in front of Buddha's statue or in the memory of Buddha. But then all over Tripitaka, there is no reference to any kind of this festival which is celebrated whole night, and the lines of the lamps are systematically lit throughout the night and for a couple of days. In Fayan's reference, there are two instances that in one where the Buddha was arrived in Shravasti, and then later on, in Jetavana Vihara, where this was the retreat of the Buddha. And then this arrival of Buddha in the Jetavana Vihara was celebrated by the dwellers of that city for several years. That's what a Fayan refers to, and they used to lit this lamp. That's what he says. Other than this, there is one reference kind of from the native perspective or First Nations perspective, I should say, or the non-Brahminic perspective, I should say, non-Vedic perspective, that when Ashoka, the greatest Mauryan king, according to the Charles Allen, he was full of remorse after the genocide he has committed in the war with the Kalinga, present as Orissa. And then after looking at all this blood, gore, and the killings he has committed, he was full of remorse, and he just threw away his sword. And then a monk kind of initiated him into Buddhism. So from the day of his throwing away sword till he's becoming a complete Buddhist, there are these 21 days from the day of the Dashera or the day of you know that other than Diwali, there's one more festival that's called the Shera. It is also similarly significant and very popular festival in India, wherein the swords and the weapons are literally cleaned and they are worshipped. But then I think that is something antithesis of what exactly happened according to the Fayans version of this particular how the Diwali was celebrated from that day. No, it is not 5 years version. I apologize. This I'm talking about the story of Ashoka is in Mahavansa. It is Sri Lankan Buddhist holy book. It is also the history and genealogies of the Buddhist kings of yore. So according to that particular book, Mahavansa, called Mahavansa, from the day of Ashoka's denouncement of his weapon or his kind of aristocracy, rather than aristocracy, his warlikeness, till his conversion or becoming a Buddhist or taking a refuge of Buddha. These 21 days, and they exactly match with the day between Dashara and Diwali. So this is the another kind of a narrative which has been already there. But then the second narratives, those are the narratives of the non-Brahminical, non-Vedic people. Those narratives. So if we see after them, we see that the first or traditional Vedic narratives, their sources, if you'd like to compare and analyze or critically analyze that what is happening here, because there is inconsistencies. They are not matching with each other, and from the historical point of view, from the historicity of these references, they are not making a sense. So if you see towards the traditional narratives I just explained or described, the most of the traditional narratives and their origins, they are from the epic of Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Puranas. According to Indologist Wendy Doniger, uh, this, and also eminent historian Romila Thapa, Puranas were basically, the timeline of the Puranas is between 200 AD or the Common Era to 1000 AD. And this is the timeline of the Puranas. About the Ramayana, writing and claims all.
Hi, folks. Just a sec. Dr. Borkar is having some network issues. Oh, he's right here. Hello.
I'm back. I'm sorry for the disturbance. So yeah. So from that perspective, Devika, and all of our esteemed viewers and audience and dear students, from that point of view, if you see that the timeline of Puranas and Ramayana, they don't go for they are not before the source of the narratives of the Jainas, Fayan, and they are not that earlier. So, and the Mahavansa. And mostly this period of the writing up of these Puranas, this period particularly is referred to the period of a counter-revolution. There's a very kind of a well-known book. It is a bit controversial, but a very well-known book among the another mainstream in India, that is Revolution and Counter-Revolution, and it is also written by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, where he refers to the kind of this history of India is nothing but a history of a battle between Buddhism and Brahminism. So this particular references when we see, so and this period I was talking about the creation of the Brahmanakas, Shrutis, Smritis, and Puranas, they match with this. And even the counter-revolution which took place under the leadership of one of the greatest minds of the Vedic camp, that is Shankaracharya. So interestingly, Shankaracharya himself has been criticized, or I should say, kind of celebrated as a Prachanna Buddha, as a pseudo-Buddhist. All any organized religion or philosophy, they have to have their own cosmology. They have to have the explanations of the life and death and what happens after life and death and heaven and hell and all these divinities and mediocrity of lives, human life. From that point of view, these Puranas play a very important role in the re-establishing of the Vedic philosophy. Vedas, those who are considered as divine and eternal, and written by none other than the divine itself, uh, these Puranas, they play a very crucial and very important role in reinstating the kind of a dominance or a religious significance of Vedas in the new times. When it is said by Dr. Ambedkar that in Indian context, myths have become history and history has become myths. So there is a practice among the Indologists and historians that when they refer to the Puranas, they try to look at the contemporary historical figures, those which has been mythologized through the Puranas. So the point I was trying to make is that the when Huang Sung came, another Chinese traveler who visited India in in the post medieval period or the early medieval period. So he found that Buddhism was pretty much alive, and in Kashi itself there were at least 100 retreats of the Buddhist monks, and more than 400 Buddhist monks used to reside there. The period of the Ramanujan, Shankaracharya, and Katyayana, and their books written on the Nyaya, Mimasa, and the philosophies and the logics, uh, they they are in itself pretty much evidence of how kind of there was a reconstruction of a Vedic ism was going on. And then now when we talk about the present days, the very successors, the current successors of this Vedic ideology, they have how beautifully, and it is really interesting to see that how they have metamorphosized themselves into Hinduism. And Hinduism, as any normal serious student of any common student or the serious student of the history or the etymology, they know that the Hindu word itself is a Persian word, and it means a black thief and an inferior person. And then now, after this entire enterprise, which started from the writing of the Manusmriti, writing of Ramayana, Mahabharata. So this project Hinduism, which culminated now, actually started then. And also, I would like to give you another analogy, which would be, of course, it should be not a kind of irrelevant, but then it will be. I hope it will be very interesting. Being brought up in the 80s and 90s, I remember to have seen this movie of Michael Douglas, the Jewel of Nile. It is a very kind of popular, very successful movies of those days. In those days, probably it is from the late 80s. In those days, in American politics and in all over Hollywood, all over in USA, there was no mention, there was no existence of one of the notorious Islamic terrorist, Osama bin Laden. But when you watch this movie, you see a character which is very similar to Osama bin Laden, who in late 90s emerges on the political, geopolitical terrains of America and whole world. So the point I'm trying to make is that here the project Hinduism, which was started in the kind of a medieval period of Indian history, actually culminated and materialized in the present times. And in these present times, now the mythological king, who according to none other than Rahul Sankrutan, who was an eminent Sanskrit and Pali scholar, is a foreign story. It is not a native Indian story. So I think I made my point, and then this juxtaposition of this traditional versus native, non-traditional narratives of Diwali. So I think we should open the forum for more questions, and in the way I would be able to contribute more emphatically. Thank you very much, Devika, and all of us, all of who are listening, be with the patience. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Borkar. All of you who have a question, if you could just put it down in the chat and we'll start taking the questions one at a time. To start off, I guess I can start with a question that I have. Thank you for the very detailed history of the alternative versions of Diwali and the origins per se. Dr. Borkar, my question is, how important, according to you, is it to understand these alternative histories of Diwali, especially in the contemporary context and the rise of Brahmanical hierarchy that way?
As we have all been witnessing since independence, this kind of hegemony and the supremacy of a particular groups at the cost of the kind of destroying the national fiber of India, and vilifying of a particular communities in the name of religion. So from that point of view, from the unfinished project of making democratic nation, I think it is very important to de-hegemonize our history and to understand it in a way it has been. This is like a cleaning of our cultural ethos, which has been marred by the poisonous agenda of the caste supremacy of certain groups, which is not helping in our nation as such.
Understood. Thank you. So Praveen Ashok asks, with the complete Hindu religion based on mythology out there to establish itself after the erasure, Buddhist religion is the celebration of Diwali in the series of establishing the hegemony of Hindu religion. I think what I get from the question is, if you could talk a little bit more about what you said in terms of Dr. Ambedkar comparing Buddhist roots with Hindu roots per se, and how that plays out in terms of a relationship with regards to Diwali.
Yeah, yeah. I would not be doing any bold statement from whatever I read about from the whatever I read from the writings of Dr. Ambedkar, and other than Dr. Ambedkar, Michael Witzel and Rahul Sankrutan, K. Jamnadas, and many other people, those who have written extensively and elaborately on Indian past and Indian present, and also sociologists and anthropologists, those who are continuously writing on the caste and the Indian society and polity. From their point of view, I would say, referring to them, that Hinduism as such is not a Brahminism completely. Mm-hmm. It is a refracted, distorted, polluted form of Buddhism. Mm-hmm. So during the time of the project Brahminism, which is now culminated in the name of Hinduism as such, the Vedic ideologues, they interpolated, they plagiarized, and they literally kind of co-opted the Buddhist and the Saman. Rather than Buddhist, I would like to use this word Saman civilization, because Ambedkar, in one of his very historically important and iconic analogies, metaphor he uses, he says that there is this beautiful bathtub made up of the gold and studded with the jewels and filled with the very fragrant and flowery driven water. And here in this bathtub, there is this beautiful, chubby, healthy, and like a divine baby of Shraman civilizations playing. So the Vedics, they come and then they take off, they take this baby off and they throw it away and then they put their filthy, ugly and demonic baby of Brahmanism or Hinduism in it. So today's Hinduism is a reflected Hindu practices, Hindu belief, and they are the distorted, reflected, and polluted forms of the real Buddhism, whatever it was in the sense of the word real, historically real Buddhism.
Perfect. Thank you. Tejas asks, is it possible that some regional festivals occurring around the same time were merged or absorbed in the grand festival of Diwali?
Uh, as an anthropologist and a student of comparative histories of the comparative religions, histories of comparative religions, I would say we all know that most of the like a grand festivals in all societies, Christian society, Islamic society, and Jewish society, and Mexican society, they revolve around the very time when there is harvest, there is crop and farming, because food is a source of sustenance. And when there is harvest, when there is a certain farming activity that yields, so they are around it. And even the birth of a Buddha is celebrated in the month of May. It coincides with this Baisakhi, where the farmers, after their laborious work of all year, they reap the fruits and they get the yield, they cut the yield, and then they take it to home. So most of these festivals, they do have the traditional, whatever the traditional narrative might have been or are, they have pre-existence and they revolve around this particular yields and then having a lot of food and ample source of sustenance. So there are other sources, there are other reasons, historical reasons behind these things, dimensions for these festivals. Of course, there are.
Very interesting. Um, if you could talk a little bit more about the Puranic influences on Diwali, maybe?
Um, there one more narrative about two narratives about the Diwali I couldn't manage to tell you, but then one is Sikhism is one of the protest religion according to sociologist Vivek Kumar from JNU. Sikhism is a protest religion and one of the protest religion, and then this protest religion Sikhism celebrates in Sikhism. Sikhs celebrate Deepavali or Diwali as a Bandi Chhod Divas, wherein they celebrate to symbolize or to remember when in the times of Mughal Basha Jahangir, during the days of Guru Hargobind, this Guru Hargobind was imprisoned by Emperor Jahangir, and on the day of Diwali, as a token of a kind of a political friendship, he released Sikh Guru Hargobind and his disciples on this particular day, and therefore Sikhs, those who abstain from saying and counting themselves as Hindus, they say that they celebrate Diwali because of the cultural significance and the prominence of the festivity around them. They celebrate Diwali as a Bandi Chhod Divas because the prisoners were released on that day. Uh, other than this, also there's one more Sikh version. Some Sikh historians say that Diwali had already been celebrating. Sikhs have been celebrating Diwali even before that, wherein one Guru Ramdas, he was one of the eminent gurus of Sikh. He kind of built a well. It is called Holy Well, and he also made sure that the 84 steps should be in that well, and then that holy water of the well was used to bathe for the disciples, and that was the celebration of the night of Diwali. In Nepal, Newar Buddhist, nowhere else Buddhist, in the Buddhist mainstream Buddhism, Diwali celebration is not that much prominent. But then among the Nepalese Newar Buddhist community, Lakshmi Puja is done on this particular day. And in the light of what is happening nowadays because of the social media, there have been many viral pictures. Have been they are there in the social media, wherein on the that iconic gate of the Sachi Stupa, which was the Buddhist vihara, a stupa which was built on the Buddhist remnants. So in that on the gate of the stupa there is this picture of a lady who is a mother of Buddha Mahamaya sitting down, and there are two elephants. They are pouring some holy water on her with holding the big pots in their trunk. And the similar picture is also seen in Ajanta, the Ajanta caves. So now there are these viral posts which say that they juxtapose the mainstream picture of Lakshmi, Mahalakshmi, who is the goddess of wealth, and this picture from the this carvings from the cave, or the stuccos from the Buddhist caves, and they are saying that, see, this is it. So this the Nevar practice of celebrating or worshipping the goddess Lakshmi on this particular, I think it shows there's a link between these things, that how there's a Buddhist link. And also there's one more a scholar from the from India. His name is his name is Sanjay Shraman, Sanjay Jothe. He says that most of the symbols, icons, and around the Diwali celebrations, they are the Buddhist symbols. They are the symbols of the Shraman civilization. For example, the tree, especially used, the tree leaves used in those for that particular celebration, the elephant and the Lakshmi and all this stuff. So somewhere or other, they have this kind of native connotations. The historicity of Diwali could be connected to that. I think so.
Priyanka asks, how true is the theory that talks about Lakshmi being an adulterated version of Mahamaya, mother of Siddhartha, and Diwali being the festival of indigenous people originally, which was meant to pay tribute to Mahamaya during Ashoka's time? Also, that it's a festival of light because people used to light a diya and had many stupas at home to symbolize the Dhamma Chakra Pravartan during Ashoka's rule. How true is this theory? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of possibilities, and then a research has to be done. Though there are some etymologists and the historians of the ancient languages and the contemporary, those who study the comparative study of the remnants of the ancient languages in present times, they are very emphatically kind of proposing some theories. Those who make a sense, that make a sense. In Bihar, there is this particular grand festival of a Chhat Puja. And those who know about the Buddhist history, they know that Buddha's mother left him for the eternal abode after 6 days of her motherhood, and she fed fed him her breast milk on the sixth day, and then she died. She passed away. So even in Hindi, there is this term ki chhati ka dudh yaad dilana. Is prakar ka. So, and also Chhat is celebrated there in the form of the Surya Puja. There are many Indologists and the etymologists. They have said that the very symbolism of the icon of the Mother Mary and Jesus and Krishna and Yashoda, they are related to this particular very kind of a heart-rending story of an infant, a royal infant, or whose mother dies on the sixth day, and then he's kind of orphan. And then this particular, there are many carvings and there are sculptures on this particular topic as well. So there's a good possibility, and research has to be done on this.
Got it. Since we're talking about the involvement of goddesses in Diwali, what, according to you, how significant is gender when it comes to demystifying the narrative of Diwali? Historically, with regards to etymology, what is your opinion?
Um, Ancient India, or the India of the antiquity was not necessarily a patriarchal India, a monolith, a monolithic idea of the patriarchal ancient India is not relevant, and it is not practical from the point of view of the history. There have been the matriarchs in India, and the kingdoms, those were ruled by matriarchs. So from that point of view, and also the female deities, they have been worshipped, people have been worshipping them all over India and all over the world, and more so in India. From this point of view, I think that if we look at the pantheon of the Indian gods and goddesses, it was this royal painter Ravi Verma was the first to iconize and depict the anthropomorphic forms or anthropomorphic forms of the gods and goddesses. They never existed before that. They were existing in the sculptures and the carvings and the stuccos. And as we all know that with a few exceptions of some kings, those who were Hinduized during the medieval ages, entire Indian terrain, archaeological terrain, is replete with the sculptures, stuccos, carvings, and artifacts related to the Shramana civilization, which includes Lokayatas, which includes Ajivikas, which includes Jainas and Jatilas, and all these 62 sects and subsects, those who were challenging each other and having the great serious discussions on the logics, the essence, the importance and the meaning of the human existence. So such was there. So what I'm trying to say is that the gender of the, I don't think there's this gender dimension here. But then as we discussed earlier that Mahamaya, most probably the pictures which have surfaced nowadays, the pictures of the stuccos of the Mahamaya, the mother of Ashoka, they literally, with all this iconography and these elephants and the pots holding the holy water and pouring on the Mahamaya, and also this divine dream of the Mahamaya before conceiving Buddha. And see, the culture and the ideology, they flow through the symbols and signs and concepts and pictures. So these symbols, Buddhism, elephant is the greatest symbol of the Buddhism and Shramana civilization, more than Buddhism. Elephant is the symbol of Shramana civilization. And this civilization was a native civilization which goes back to Harappa and Indus civilization. So from the gender dimension, I don't think this is deliberately done, but then it was a part and parcel of the Shramana civilization. Women, female, and the male deities and the great people, they were celebrated and they were worshipped.
The next question we have is, since the past 2-3 years, Deepdan Utsav has emerged. Does it have any validity?
See, very interesting, very good question. I was looking forward for this question. After the emergence of the Bahujan kind of mainstream, Bahujan ideology, there have been these attempts on the part of those who are not Vedics, or those who are majority of population of India, like SC, STs and OBCs and some of the religious minorities. They started creating their own iconography and their own pantheon. So recently there has been this kind of emergence of the narrative of the Mahishasur. And etymologically and Indologically, historically as well, Mahishasur, the narrative of the Mahishasur, it holds a lot of substantiality and it holds a lot of substantial water in their argument. But then these particular narratives which are emerging nowadays for the sake of narratives and to kind of the protest, they are more than the protest narratives. The way Puranas were not the religious scriptures, they were the political scriptures. The way Ramayana, yesterday the building of the grand structure of the Ram Mandir was it was actualized on the place there where a mosque stood. So this is how it works. Uh, I am not for the Mahishasura narrative, neither I am for the Deep Dinosaur. I'm just doing the critical analysis of it, but then find solace and they find some sense in celebrating it, and they could provide the philosophical logical base. It doesn't matter whether it's success or fails, or if they accepted or not accepted by the mainstream or the common masses.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Borkar. If we have any more questions, since we've come to yeah, that's how long the session was supposed to run. We've ended right on 6 o'clock. So that's perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Borkar, for joining us today and for the very interesting talk that identified the diverse strands that Diwali is actually associated with and not one hegemonic narrative. So thank you so much. And if anyone has any more questions, you can write to us, and the recorded session will be available on the link that the organizing committee has put up. The YouTube link is right there. You can access it. And thank you so much, Dr. Borkar, on behalf of St. Antony's GCR and for everyone who attended today. It was a
You're
pleasure.
more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.